she was just like, I had a dream that you said that you were gay when you came out to me.
There's something to the language of that. There, you always have to kind of couch something with, I had a dream, and then God whispered to me, maybe.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm like, I've been in ministry for 17 years. I'm no dummy.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do? I'd like to know the things that specifically make you.
Hey, I'm Tim Barnes. You are the genre, and in every episode of this show, I ask someone about the first genres that inspired them, the first crafts that they pursued, and how they feel about those first pursuits. Now, this episode, I'm talking to someone with a controversial first name these days. His name is Israel Isaac. He's a recording artist and musician, and he's also, am I saying this right, a recurring cast member in the very popular reality show Vanderpump Rules, which I have gotten sucked into the vortex of, but don't keep up with as much as I should. In this episode, we talk a lot about his experiences in church, coming out of the closet, and enhancing his faith in the process. He's also releasing a new single in July called To Love You, and you can keep up with some of his new YouTube videos, collaborating with James Charles and Joey Graceffa. But this isn't about James and Joey. This is about Israel Isaac. Please enjoy this conversation. I'm not the most voracious Vanderpump Rules watcher, but I got into it because of our friend Rob Schulte. And yes. I believe the first time you popped up is this season. Is that correct?
No, the season before. This season.
Okay.
Yeah, this was when I worked at Schwartz and Sandy's. And
there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So I was seeing, there at the house stand, as well as like hanging out with the group at Sandoval's house. Just like specific background moments of of last season.
And so what does it mean? So now you've gone from being basically like a background character on this reality show, and now you're a little bit more in the forefront.
Yeah, so they're starting to present me a lot more. I finally got the name card on there. And so
nice.
It's just cool because, when the producers start to speak to you more frequently and they're asking you about your relationships with other cast members and stuff like that, it just feels cool to be involved. And I think my first year was just about learning what the entire world was about. I had no idea about Bravo or anything like that. I was just an innocent bystander in the midst of chaos. And
so you were just trying to find a nice job, and then you ended up on a reality show.
Yeah. So now it's just fun because I'm like, I've built these relationships with these people, and, I can now see sides and reasonings behind, specific arguments and or even just the depth of a lot of these relationships and how long they've been forming. And so it's cool to be a new face where people are like, oh my goodness, that's the guy that I now work at SUR.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a fun little full circle moment for me where it's like I started from not knowing anything to now I'm like, whoa, this like things change every single week within the group of these people.
Yeah, and you're in the full tornado of it. And I've never really thought about it, but it feels like being on a reality show is constant time travel because you're living in the moment with your friends, but then everyone else is watching something from the past, but they're in the moment. They're in the moment with that aspect of
for
the past.
Them. Yes. Yeah. So crazy. Yeah. Cause and then you relive moments and you see things differently, especially with editing, but like you see things differently once it comes out. Like it was so funny. One of the scenes, Tom Sandoval had a pool party at his place and they wanted to make it like, by the way I saw it, they really wanted to make it the most awkward like party ever.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Because that was my first really like noticing you was that moment. And it was like, one, Tom Sandoval has he's like diverse friend group.
Yeah.
It seems like. It's like
absolutely.
His friends are the X-Men.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got the tall black guy, you got the trans girl, you got the Asian guy. Like, we're a hodgepodge for sure.
So, are you from California? Are you part of this California culture in general?
No, I'm from New York, so I'm from the Bronx, and
Okay.
I've only been in LA for 2 years. And so I moved from New York to Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Kentucky, and then I came to California.
Okay. What in your life makes you go through all of those different places?
Partly I was still, having to do with like school and work, and my family kind of moved us around when we were young, at least from like New York to Florida. And then I went to like four different middle schools. So I think that's kind of what gave me the travel bug. And I was in like every single extracurricular class. So we were going on trips and like seeing the world. And I think it just made like, I don't know how my family's still in Florida, because the minute I like saw more of the world, I was like, I gotta go. And so then there was like different music opportunities, as well as like getting to then like finally come out once I moved to LA
Mm.
publicly. And that was like one of the bigger things for me, was like each state that I lived in, I think I got a little bit more and more courageous and more positive of the fact that I deserve to live my life fully and to the fullest. And so I finally got the confidence once I came here, regardless of what my family would say or what people that I know from my past would say. But it was like, I felt like it was just the right time to finally come out publicly.
And this was just a few years ago.
2 years ago, I just
2 years
celebrated it
ago.
in Vegas.
Nice.
Lisa and Pandora had us go to Vanderpump Vegas and Vanderpump Cocktail Garden.
Wow.
And we went and I celebrated with some of my closest friends. So it's a yearly thing that I do. Whereas like the year since I came out, as well as like when I moved to LA, the year before I celebrated at Schwartz and Sandy's, we threw a huge party and stuff like that. So it's just going to be a little tradition where each year after moving here and coming out public, it was just like a huge thing that definitely saved my life.
Nice. I feel like an assumption is with a name like Israel, which right now is a very intense name to have. Googling your
Absolutely.
name.
Oh,
I mean,
just imagine meeting people day to day. It's like it's either it goes over their head and they're like, "Oh my goodness, that's a beautiful name," or it's like they have
yeah.
to bring it up. Like, "Oh, really? Your name's Israel? Wow!"
But it's not only it's Israel. Then your last name is also a biblical name, and there's like certain names, like if your name is Christian, if your name is Zion. I'm sure there are a lot of
Yeah,
anti-Zionist Zions. I'm sure but that is like a stamp of like you better stick to the rules that we've established within.
absolutely,
So is that a
absolutely.
part of the difficulty of you coming out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I grew up very, very Pentecostal, and in the family of pastors, and so my uncle was our pastor, my dad was the bishop, and for years it was just like, yeah, church and God was all we did, all we knew. Sitting around a table having Bible study together, waking up to pray every morning, and so I think the craziest thing was that out of all my siblings, was the one that found my faith first.
Mhm.
Probably not before my oldest sister, but my siblings that were more my age, definitely. I was like about 5 years old, where I was in the front of the church, and they were singing and playing, and for some reason I just started bawling. I was like, it just like knew it was God, and I think that was from that moment on that I was like, I know that I believe in God, and that's what
Mm.
sustained me. Like regardless of what anyone else wants to think or believe about me, I can hold on to my faith and still be who I am.
Yeah, and I think that's great. There's something about all religions, I feel, where through a certain path you can get this sensation of a greater something, and
Absolutely.
it's just that sensation is the most important thing. It seems like.
Oh yeah, yeah. But my parents were definitely very tough on me, and growing up, like then to go into ministry, I've been in ministry for the past 17 years. To be singing and playing at a church that are non-affirming, I was going through several churches where I just like hid my sexuality, and then others would be, I'd obviously like I'd have to have like talks with the pastor, and they'd be
Mm.
like, what we believe, so just don't do that.
But isn't that interesting though? There is something where, especially, and I mean, it's very general to say like the black church or the black community sometimes, but
Hmm.
there are a lot of just understood unspoken things, and I feel like the cliche is the gay choir teacher, or
Yep,
whatever. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, and it's so crazy. I mean, because I would say when it comes to the black church, it's the most prevalent, but the least talked about. And I think I went to only when I was a kid. I went to mostly black churches, And when I got older, I was always singing at these like non-denom, multiracial, but mostly white churches. And they make it a point to, you'll be sat in a meeting and like, you'll have to meet with pastors and stuff like that. Whereas like a lot of the black churches, they're all up in the choirs, they're all up in the pews, and it's just they just don't necessarily mention it. It's kind of like beat around the bush because we know that that's half of our attendance.
And I've always felt like, in the black community, it's like, you can be gay as long as you can sing. If you stop singing.
Oh yeah. You better be able to carry a tune because they're the ones that are leading us in worship, honestly. What are we going to, who's going to direct our choir? Who's going to sing in our praise team if we don't?
Yeah. So I feel like I know the answer, but like you being wrapped up in the church, finding God at such a young age and being in tune with that feeling, what would you say was the first genre that called out to you when you were a kid?
I would say gospel for sure.
Gospel music.
I remember watching he wasn't a family member, but he was the organist at my uncle's church, and my dad would sit me next to him while he played during service. And I remember just being like fascinated at whatever was happening. I couldn't completely comprehend, but I knew I fell in love with the organ. Couldn't play for my life growing up, and I ended up like saying, and it transitioned to then like R&B music taking root in my life, like Jackson 5, fell in love with. And so, that's what.
So that's one of those like, because some people are like intense where it's like, you can't, what is it? It's not sacrilegious music. There's a term for it. Non-secular, secular music.
Yeah.
Where was there anything like that where, there was like, if you were to start being into a certain type of R&B or a certain type of music, that would have been a big no-no?
No, what was really cool about my family was that my dad was obsessed with the Jackson 5, and that's what set me on to like, R&B. And it was like, then I heard like Ashanti and Brandy, and you hear all these like artists that were kind of Whitney. And so, the teeter-totter of gospel to secular, I think back in the day, because it was less vulgar, or less, in their eyes, it was less like of a huge jump, to like they were singing about love and R&B and passion and stuff like that. And it was an easy translation to gospel. Whereas like if I showed my dad an R&B song today, that would be very, very different.
So you had this love for gospel. How did you start to incorporate that into your life? Like, was it, I'm assuming it was like easy to be like, I want to be a part of the choir. I want to be a part of the band. I want to be a part of all that stuff.
Yeah. So I think my parents definitely, my dad had this dream of us being the Jackson 5 family.
Oh, wow.
He like threw an instrument in all of our hands, and I was the only one that stuck with it. I was the only one that stuck with music. I think it continued to grow as our family always got like put in the forefront in church to sing and like play and whatnot. But I was really the only one passionate to stay like within the music vein. And so probably by the time I left New York, my dad stayed in New York, we moved to Florida. I think I learned like a new way of expressing musicality, that it wasn't just our new genre. It wasn't just in music, but it was in people. I think I grew like a love for seeing people, regardless of what it was in the arts, just like enjoy themselves through drama, through art, through like whatever was an expression. I fell in love with it, and so I was always trying everything. I think our parents like forced us to.
What do you think it was about you that made you stick with music more than your other family members?
I think I realized that music was my lifeline at a young age. I like had a very, very traumatic upbringing, and our family was very, very dysfunctional. And we had just several moments in life where we'd have these like huge blow ups and like fights and arguments between parents and kids, kids and kids, parents and now new like significant others, different like guys my mom would start dating. And so it was a show in my household. And I always escaped to my garage where my mom had bought me this like $200 upright piano that we saw at a thrift store. And this is where I laughed, I cried, and I think I really learned to play piano. I was like, when I turned like 11, I noticed I was like really good. I was like, oh, okay, I can actually see myself doing it. But I think that like the trauma and needing an escape, like music was that for me. You know, my other brothers like played sports and, you know, are heavily involved in it. My brother plays pro ball now, you know, and it's like still such a big part of his life. But I think I always took like the music route where it was just like, there's even days that like I'll go to a coffee shop and I have like my headphones on and no music playing. It comforts me for some reason. Like all anxiety is like gone, but just like the fact that like I think I grew up with like a CD-ROM in my head, you know, like headphones in. It was like my peace, or like I'm sitting at the piano,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, regardless of crying or laughing, it just brought me serenity.
I have a similar love of the piano. I actually, like, during the pandemic, I bought a keyboard, like a weighted keyboard, and I haven't stuck with it as much as I should have. But I took a little bit of piano when I was a kid, and I always,
Nice.
when I was at church, even, I remember I would always do this little thing with my hands. I know this is not recording video, but I would always do that. And I'd always like tap my fingers on the back of the chair in front of me
Yeah,
whenever the band was doing whatever. And
I do that still to this day. I pretend like there's a piano, and I'm like when I'm listening to a song,
yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
know the layout of a piano, and I can choose
Uh,
any key to play the
oh,
song in,
nice.
and so you just follow it by ear, like
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know the details, but I know and I know to go to my right when it's a high note, go to my
yeah,
left,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And there is something very freeing about the piano in a way that is different from other instruments. And I'm sure that every musician feels this way about whatever their specific instrument is. But I'm also thinking about how, I don't know if this is the type of church where, and it sounds like it was, where, you know, someone's playing the piano or the organ while the preacher is talking. So
yeah,
there is like, the music is a part of the call and response. And I feel
absolutely.
like there's possibly some connection into how you're always having music in your head throughout your days too. Like it makes everything feel purposeful. It's like jazz in that there's a lot of
Yeah,
accidents, but then, you know, the response and like incorporating all that makes it all
makes
feel
sense.
like,
Yep,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. That's so true.
Was this a big church?
I wouldn't say it was a big church. I would say it was probably a congregation of like 60 people, but it was more family than anything. Like it was like
Okay, okay.
it was my family. Like I went to church with my aunts and uncles, and you know, like everyone was like somewhat related because we all like lived in the same area in New York. Our church was like right behind Yankee Stadium. Yeah, it was like a little family affair. I was just like I felt like I was going to church with my family 24/7, and then the people that I weren't related to, my parents told us our entire lives that those were our aunts and uncles. So still to this day,
Yeah, yeah.
they're our aunts and uncles.
It feels like that type of church, there is an immediate intimacy. And even just like seeing your close family enter this, sometimes like a contemplative state. It sounds like there was some speaking in tongues. You're
Yeah,
seeing all of
absolutely.
these various emotions, and you're seeing all of this get poured in this one space. I went to a very like big church, and I even have a little bit of jealousy. It was like a big non-denominational church. It
Mm-hmm.
was Crenshaw Christian Center in
Okay.
LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just always asking questions, and I have a very almost just like very generalized concept of religion and the way that I incorporate it in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember even that I was like, I don't want the connection. I was that kind of person. I don't want to reach this intimate space with everyone. I didn't know how to speak in tongues,
Uh-huh.
and that's what gives me this. I have a jealousy of like the Catholic Church. Now it's just like rigid and systems, and
Yeah.
people can be bored in there. They can all they. It's like all they have to do is
Go
sit.
through the
But the
ceremony and then get
participation,
out.
yeah, but the participation of a lot of black churches was always like, really, I gotta.
Yeah.
Um,
Lift one arm, spin around, sit back
yeah,
down,
yeah, yeah.
talk to your neighbor,
So I'm
shout.
fascinated that you didn't run away from that. Like you still embrace that communal part of it.
Yeah, I think what I realized in my entire life, like even through going from like small church to big church, and I've led at mega churches for years, and it was like um, they were always a small pocket within the big picture, and so no matter how big the church was, you could still feel like you would get found out if they were like, you know, if people were with you long enough, or like if you did enough time at the church. It's like especially for being a queer person, like in a church where it's like you grow up almost with the confusion of, is this right for me or not? Before LA, I was still wrestling with, like I'm supposed to do what God has for me and what I'm supposed to do, for him. And so if it's like not being myself, if it's like silencing this part of myself, then I've got to do what I've got to do for God. And I think it was like church big or small. I think it was like just my heart and mind issue. I was struggling with the lack of knowledge that I could be myself and still be loved by God. And I think that was like, what's beat into you your entire life is that you are supposed to change and lay down your entire life for God. And so anything that doesn't look like him, you need to get rid of. And so it wasn't just like a dying to myself. It was like I was actually killing myself. I was living in San Diego for 3 years before I moved to LA. And that was like my breaking point where I was like heavily an alcoholic. And it was like some of the most scary times of my life. I would get myself into situations that I was like insane to think about now. But I was living with pastors there and I was leading at the church that I was at the time. And I had kind of reached like, my third year mark, and my roommates that were pastors had started to ask me questions about my sexuality and stuff like that. And
was it sort of like, why aren't you dating? Was it that kind
well, it was so funny because the wife, which I was actually closer to, she was just like, I had a dream that you said that you were gay, like you came out to me. And whether it was true or not,
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit too. Because
yeah, exactly. Whether it's true or not, whatever.
But there's something to the language of that. You always have to kind of couch something with, had a dream, and then God whispered to me.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm like, I've been in ministry for 17 years. I'm no dummy, but whatever you say. But I felt right about speaking to her because she has always been great. I mean, even to this day, she's been great to me. The husband, on the other hand, he was a lot more rigid and felt like he needed to start like almost like counseling me. And we just had a rough relationship, especially towards the end. And so I had got kicked out of that place. I lived with my friend for about like a month before moving to LA. And so things were like, I think I'd realized that like the way that my life had been going was not working, no matter how much I was involved in the church, no matter how much I tried to check the boxes and do what the pastors told me to do. And I think I was just so fixated on fix me, because whatever the pastor says is law, whatever, the spiritual leader says is law. And I realized at that point, once I had moved out, that my entire life I was used to being told what to do. Like I didn't know how to function on my own. I didn't know how to think on my own.
You're always looking for that sort of leader of the herd.
Because when you're told in church that, like respect and honor your pastor and your bishop, and they give all this honor to the pastor and bishop. It's like, you never question anything. You never test anything out. You never get to a point where you're like, oh, maybe that word wasn't for me. I was the literal Christian.
Oh wow!
Very literal Christian. That was like, okay, what he says goes. I need to change this. I need to fix that. And so everything about my life turned into, I'm a mess and I need to fix myself.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it felt like if you had questions, it's like, I'm not understanding it properly. Like you're I'm trying to do this math problem, but
it's not coming out properly. I'm like, definitely not working.
I had the same, like I was a literal Christian, but I kept being fascinated by the little contradictions, even the contradictions in everyday life by like, why are some of my uncles lying? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you know the rules?
Yeah.
I'm trying to take this seriously.
There's the rules. You got to play the game properly. And I mean, that was my entire life, was just like, how can I fit into this that wasn't even designed for me? How can I fit into this square box that says, we as Christians are here. Those that are lost are out there. If you want to be part of us, this is how you need to conduct yourself. This is how you need to live. And until I found out that I didn't want to be a part of that party, until I realized that, wait a minute, the fact that there's these evangelical Christians that are saying, you're lost, I'm found, I'm saved, you're not. You're on the outskirts, you need help, you need saving. I realized that it was more exclusion than, someone that's not a believer, that just loves everybody. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, from that moment on, once I got kicked out, it was like big, like coming to LA was the biggest saving grace for me. And I could never be more thankful for what it's done for my life. I'm living in the best days of my life. I can say that.
That's amazing. And I always think about, the terminology of like the flock and, it's like the terminology of being a sheep like
Yeah.
is a part of it. And if you kind of look at it from the outside, it's a little odd. It's like, it's kind of,
Oh yeah. Do what we do, say what we say, and you'll be safe. Don't wander whatsoever. Good question.
Don't scroll away. You Are the Genre. We'll be right back after the break. You Are the Genre is an independently produced podcast, which I guess puts us in the camp of things that are listener supported. You can support me in a number of ways. You can subscribe to the podcast or wherever you're listening and leave it a nice rating or review. It really, really helps with getting the word out there about the show. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. You can do that for free, or you can upgrade to paid. If you do it for free, you get regular things from me like daily jokes and updates on my life. And if you upgrade to paid, you get advanced episodes of You Are the Genre, plus other goodies. I typically use this break in the middle of the show to promote something that I've been enjoying. And it looks like I'm about to promote another podcast, a podcast that's not mine. This one has an incredible title. It's called Who Shat on the Floor at My Wedding and Other Crimes. It's become a mainstay in my home. I listen to it in passing, which I guess is my way of saying someone else in my home has really been listening to it. But it's intensely funny and original, and you can't help but laugh. But I suppose I should promote another podcast that I am actually a part of. This one's called Yub Nub. It's a Star Wars podcast that I co-host with my friend Jim Fagan. We're dedicating this current season to all the media that inspired George Lucas to create Star Wars and all of the media that he created leading up to the 1977 release of the first Star Wars film. It's a really good time. So head over to Yub Nub, give that a listen, and keep listening to this. And while you do that, subscribe to my newsletter. Get all of the information you need at youarethegenre.com. Now, back to the episode. Where were we? And I don't want to get away from the music, but a lot of the experiences I've heard of people coming out, it's like this concept of your found family, like you found your your new family. It seems like, especially with all the traveling that you're doing, you had a lot of different found families within these various churches. But when did you get to a family of people that accepted you for you? Is this the group of people that were at that awkward party?
So it's so funny because Tom Sandoval was one of the first people that I met when I moved to LA. He came up to me the Abbey, and this was like super fresh, and I don't even think I was out publicly yet, but he had came up to me and like bought me my drinks for the entire night. Was just like super sweet. And months later, just like the more we hung out, he like brought me into his family of people. And so I mean I would say that these group of Vanderpumpies, they were my first family in LA, Rachel and Sandoval and Kyle Chan. Like I was brought into, it was like Mila Stone. I met a lot of people through him, and it brought me into this little family where it was like, we were having just the time of our lives. Like no worries, before everything went crazy, we were having such an honest and like good time, like getting to know each other. And like, that was my first experience here, was just like being able to find and make great friends, and so I wouldn't say that they're the closest people that I am to now since everything has happened. It's definitely altered specific relationships, some I still hold dear. But yeah, obviously I think for everyone can say that all of our relationships look somewhat different.
So what was happening with your music throughout all of these shifts? Would you say you left the church in a way, or like what
so it's crazy. There? So I wrote a song in 2020 called "Can I Be Me with You," and that was like my attempt at coming out. In a way, it was like saying it without saying it. My aunt was the only person that questioned the lyrics and was just like, I wanted to know what it was about, which she knew. She was playing dumb, but she wanted me to.
There's so many like Christian songs. There's so many Christian songs that feel like if you replace a certain word with guy or girl,
yeah, Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But it was definitely like the chorus is, "Can I be me with you? Tell you all the truth. Please tell me
Uh-huh.
you'll stay. You can still love me this way. I don't
Uh-huh.
want to be anything but me. Please tell me you'll stay. You can still love me this way." So it's like
Uh-huh.
it was my version of I needed to release this because it was a time in my life where I was getting into heavy arguments with my mom. And it was definitely regards to like me just like the person that I was becoming. And the more I realized that I was like in my own space, like providing for myself, was like I don't need the validation of even family. And as much as like that's not everyone has that story, like a lot of people have that closest with their family where they feel supported and in their endeavors and what they're going after with their life. I'm on the end where it's like I don't have a close relationship with most of my family, and I have to validate myself, and I have to build my own family around myself. And so it kind of pushed me to write, that those like arguments that I was having with her kind of did bring out creativity. It was a rage creativity.
Yeah.
Creative
And force
rage.
you to kind of become that leader that you'd been searching for too for
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. And so I mean, yeah, that was like step one. And then it wasn't until I moved to LA where it was like, because I had like released a whole documentary music video and all this kind of stuff, and you can still see
Mhm.
how I'm like a little tamed about my sexuality and being myself and stuff like that. And then it was like LA just went full blown. And like it's the funniest thing because my pastor now, he'll tell me like you can see from my Instagram where things just completely changed for me. And so regards to that, I met this pastor when I moved here. He was starting a church. I would see his Instagram and stuff like that. It's called LA Church. I still
Mhm.
lead there to this day. And it was the first queer affirming church I'd ever been to. I got to help open it, start it. So it was
Mhm.
just like really cool to be a part of. Where it's like, we get to create the DNA of what is a place that accepts and loves all, but also allows people to navigate their religious experience across the board.
Mhm.
So it's like it doesn't matter what you believe in. If you need a home base that allows you the space to figure it out, LA Church is the place to do it. And so it's a good church of like deconstruction and reconstruction and healing and allowing you to see things differently. Whereas like, you may have been beaten over the head by specific Bible verses. They're like really good about shedding light on true meaning and different ways of thinking about specific verses
Mhm.
and stuff like that, other than what we've heard from a pulpit our entire lives. And so that's what definitely kept me in the church. I didn't go to church for about 6 months when I moved here. And it wasn't ever me leaving the church because I know that God will always be a part of my life. And you can also love God without having to go to church. But I think that was like the line in the sand for me where I was like, I'm not going to ever go to a church again that doesn't love and affirm who I am as a person. And so, I'm not listening to anyone that has the ability to spew hate on any kind of human.
Mhm.
And so I am thankful for that. But yeah, I'm still a worship leader. I lead every weekend on Sundays. And so that's how God has still been and music has still been a big part of my life when it comes to being out now here in LA.
So you tell me that this is a church where a certain type of churchy shade doesn't exist?
No,
That sort of
no.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no, we're not like
there has to be some level of gossip, right?
no, no, it's so crazy because yeah, it's just like there's no yeah, like and then we're not like screwing people over and then like covering it up or like shoving it
Mm.
under a rug or whatever. It's just like when you grow up in ministry, you learn the good and the bad and the ugly. And I learned about things since I was like 11 years old. I was hearing about the affairs and gossip in the church by my ministry directors, and I don't know how that was like normal, but I was an 11-year-old kid on the worship team
Uh,
hearing those kind of stories from my worship director. Like, oh my goodness, can you believe so and so slept with this person? And I'm like,
wow, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I was hearing it in the church. And so it's like, yeah, it's there and it's alive. But the wild thing is that I just won't ever be a part of an establishment again that pretends like those things don't exist and
Mm.
that those things don't happen in life. And instead of helping, we're just going to talk and pretend like we're praying for them when it's mostly just to spread rumors and or gossip. And so I'm a part of a very healthy system now that
Nice. But let's be clear. At the same time, you're on a reality show in which that's where you're getting your churchy.
That's where I get my gospel. Yes, and we're not. Yes, we're not. And I can still say to this day, I am not a perfect human. I got into a couple media tiffs in the past year, but I am so much better. And but that's the cool thing is that I get to learn and do better once I know better and all this kind of stuff. So but if you come for me, it's not that pretty. It's not going to be that pretty.
So how have your musical goals shifted throughout your life? Like when you first had that passion for music, when you were playing the piano as a kid during these lonely moments, was it the goal of being a gospel musician throughout? Has that ever shifted?
It's so wild because I think a lot of the dream, the quote unquote dream, was imposed on me. Like I think my parents always had ideas for me. So a lot of what I heard was like, no matter what I did, it was like, well, why aren't you doing this? Like, why don't you have an album out? Why aren't you doing this? And I realized that even through that and within church music, I never did what I wanted to do and the way that I wanted to do it. It was always like on someone else's terms and or for someone else. And so as a kid, it went from my hideaway place to then my family being able to see like, cha-ching, there's a way to make money out of this.
Yeah.
But then to me, like rebelling in a way, it's not what it was ever about for me. I still don't feel like I'm like a performer. My music, it's a very weird space for me when it comes to music because I do what the heart wants when it comes to music. Like I have to feel it. That's why I'm not one of these like music robots that's just like writing every single day, just to push out a single or an album or anything like that. Mm. For me, like I might not have another song for 2 years, but I'm actually writing one right now because of, I don't know if I should say this because it's a surprise to him, but I'm hoping that he doesn't listen to this podcast. He's been listening to my stuff recently. But yeah, I wrote A Man That I Am Dating Now. I wrote him a song.
Oh, nice.
It's still in the works, but yeah, okay. I think I've always written that to how I feel and in the moment. And so it's like, my first single was in 2020. My second single wasn't until 2021, the next one. And so this song is like, it's 2024. So it's like, so it's like, I do things as it comes, I think, for music in that art form. And I think I have so much more to offer the world now because I was subjected to one thing. I was prayed over and I was told my entire life, you're a worship leader. You're a worship leader. This is what you do. This is who you are. And until I moved to LA, I never crossed any lanes that I'd never put my toe in any of these lanes that I thought I would have, and I've never done any of the things that I'm doing now. It's just like, I never had a camera in my face, filming for television and those possibilities weren't in my head because of what I was told that was my assignment on this earth, what my purpose was. And so I think when it comes to music, I no longer have specific vision for it. I no longer have specific vision for anything really. It's like when it comes to being myself, I realize that I'm only 2 years old. Oh, wow. Like it's only been 2 years. And I need to give myself the time to explore as many things as I can that I missed out on, growing up because of, the years of sports that I did that I resented that, wasn't me, but I was told that I needed to do, and just like time after time, things that I was just like put on me that I was, subjected to. And so I'm in the space now where it's like, I've got the entire world in front of me and I get to like finally like live and figure out what the heck am I passionate about? Like, what do I love besides music? Music will always be there. And I still get to play and sing every single weekend, but I don't think it's my entire bread and butter. I have opportunities to film and do podcasts and, I think there's so much more, and I'm an event host, and so it's like there's so much still that I want to tap into that I'm allowing myself the growing process to do that I didn't I wasn't allowed to when I was younger. And so whatever it is that comes my way, if it's like in entertainment, I'm here for it. And I want to give it a shot, and I want to fail at it, and I want to get good at it,
Yeah.
and get better the more I try. And so I'm in this like new canvas space where I'm like, I'm growing into a little toddler all over, and my sexuality and all this, so I'm taking the pressure off myself. And I posted something on Instagram last week, or no, a couple weeks ago, where it's like I almost left LA because of this specific reason, where I had put so much pressure on myself to make it and/or have the greatest friends and like have the stellar career. And like when things don't pan out the way you want to in the time that you want it to, what do? Do you run away? Or do you like buckle down and figure out, and realize that you're so young at what you're doing now that you have to weather and allow yourself to season through this stuff. And so now I'm just like, chill, dude, like have fun, like enjoy life. Like I'm going on trips now. I'm like loving life. I'm dating. I'm like, pressure's off. I'm just trying to finally start to live.
That's great. And you're feeling that freedom in your music, because you described that one song where it was you're kind of tiptoeing around these things that you wanted to discuss.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now I'm ready to release a song about a boy.
I guess I'm going to make an observation and then ask the question, because with my career in the entertainment industry, and I feel like my understanding of gay people opened when I became a tech in theater in high school. That was my first and a great number of the gay people that I met throughout my life, I would say so many have a deep connection with their faith. And I think that's something that a lot of people who aren't in spaces where they interact with gay people don't realize. But it also makes me wonder, like, is there any difficulty within the community? I know this is a very generalized thing. I feel like a white person talking within the within the gay community. Is there difficulty when you tell someone that you have this deep connection with your faith? Does that get complicated?
What's so fun is that I think it's done the opposite. I've had beautiful encounters, and I'm treated with such respect. I think once people realize or learn about my faith, and I think that because I'm not one that's on my soapbox every single day telling people how they should live and like what they should do to better their life, they can see me as human and see me as equal. You'll see me at church and you'll see me at your local gay bar, and so I think what has been fun for me is that, even walking around in West Hollywood, I'll post a video of me leading worship. And, there was a guy that stopped me not too long ago with tears in his eyes. It's literally like, I listened to your video and I don't think you understand how much I needed it. And this man is crying in the club, literally like in tears. And I think there's a space for everything and everyone. And when we learn that we're not so different to the point of excluding or like isolating anyone, the closer we can be as people. When we can learn that Christianity and sexuality can exist, that they're real, and not play as if these things are taboo anymore, or like, of course they will always be touchy subjects because of its history. It's the same with racism. They're going to be touchy subjects due to history, but it doesn't mean that we shy away from allowing conversations to happen, allowing people to express themselves the way they desire to. Because if a gay person were to judge me for being a Christian, it would be just as bad as a Christian person judging them for being gay, And so regardless of what it is, we need to learn to respect each other and their decisions of whether it is, I'm a person of faith or not. I'm a gay person who hates God. I can't be upset with that person because I know exactly what it did to me for years, whereas like I had this wrestle with being told that God, would detest me and that I would be sent to hell. And The only difference for me and them is that I was given the opportunity to have a personal experience before I ever even knew about what my sexual orientation was. God imprinted on me. And so it was like, regardless of any human, whether they said, you're gay, you're going to hell, to this day, for me, it doesn't mean anything to me. To me, it doesn't affect me nor hurt me because I've already accepted, God into my life. And it's the same thing as if like I was this Christian who, was hated on by the gays. It's like I think that it was until I allowed myself to see every single person as human. There was always, I was leading worship from the pulpit, and especially in Atlanta, and I would see this specific gay person. He would worship his behind off, like literally be front row, face full of makeup, like long ass dreads. And I remember judging him so hard.
Mm.
I was judging myself. I was judging the fact that he could be himself and I couldn't. I was judging the fact that in my mind he was going to hell because he decided this life for himself without me fully seeing that this dude is front row, undignified, like worshiping God in his truest form. And I'm supposed to be the Christian that is up there, and I'm bitter, singing to God. I'm up there bitter. I'm up there angry, judging this person for doing so. And I will always think about that moment, and I'll always be so sad for the person that I was and disgusted at the person that I was. That vice versa, I will never be in a place where I could ever damn anyone to hell, nor be in a place where I'm hating on gays for their issue with God, And so I feel like it's helped a lot of people since they've seen me be so vulnerable on social media and stuff like that about my faith and who God is to me. Whether they understand it, don't like it. I've got friends that, joke about people worshiping and stuff like that, people that I work with and stuff like that. And I know it comes from a place of hurt, because I was that same person, when it came to looking at a guy holding a purse. My best friend when I was in San Diego, I remember him, and I remember saying, like, why do you have to be so flamboyant? Like, why do you have to do all that? Like, why can't you just be a guy that likes guys? Like, the most ridiculous things that used to come out of my mouth, And it's just so crazy. So it's just, it goes both ways, and regardless, like all across the board, gay and Christian, like respect is like so important. And so I think I help a lot of people now get to see that it's possible to love and be loved by God.
I remember in high school, we took a trip to the Museum of Tolerance. I remember my history teacher had a big issue with that term tolerance. Like why isn't it acceptance? And I feel like you're in that vortex of that debate in a sense of tolerance versus acceptance. And also you're living in this contradiction of the moment where there are a lot of people who are like, oh, young men are being indoctrinated to be gay. But also because I don't know if you're, sort of like a proselytizing or if but you're also in this space of like, you're gay and you're trying to bring people towards this specific religion in a way. You're trying to bring people closer to Christ. So do you see like I think it's a very, in a way, funny position to be in where you're in between those two things. Like you're trying to, like, people might think you're trying to convert people one way or the other, or both. Their issue might be the both of it. Their issue might be the one side of it or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like purpose changes over time, and I think the church that I would say I was a part of growing up was more of the you seek out to convert, but I don't believe that's my call anymore. Like I don't live my life to bring people to Christ. And that sounds wild, being a Christian, and I don't, I think I had to get to a place where it was like, in the most base and like basic way, I want to show people that they can love and be loved by God, period. And it's not a telling, it's not a let me bring you to church this weekend so you could, fall in love with God. Was that one of the checklists that I used to have to do while I was in ministry school and all? Because we played the game. It was like, which youth kid are you gonna save? And that's just not where I feel like my call is, whether it's like for life or in the moment. I think God is allowing me to work on me, and people are either falling more in love with Him or more in love with themselves because of it. When they see my life, they get to see the goodness of God. And I think it's not any preaching that will do it. It's not any pushing it down anyone's throat, and even converting. Like, I hate that word because I went through conversion therapy, like I was put through it. And so bringing people to Christ for me is not my goal at the moment. It's allowing people to see my life and be inspired and be touched. And that's like the majority of all the messages that I get flooded through my DMs. It's like, you inspire me so much. You inspire me so much. And it's like, if I can do that and realize that people are following my life, like I post something random and people are like hungry for the content that, I bring. Like I was like posting about this guy that I'm dating recently, and I kind of like hit him from the public eye, like hit him, and people are all over my social media now, like, fiending to find out who this person is. But I realize that I do have, regardless of, attention or followers or whatever, it's like, I know that I have a group of people that I have their attention, and they look to me, whether it be for funny content or, spiritual content, my singing, the podcasts or the events that I host, like or Vanderpump stuff. It's like, I know that within that entire accumulation of people, I know that what I bring to the table inspires people. And so if I can do that, regardless of if it's something to do with spirituality or not, regardless if it has something to do with sexuality or not, I think that's my goal in life right now. It's just to be the best me, that people feel inspired to hopefully be their best selves,
Well, it seems great, and I think it's like amazing to see anyone reach that level of peace. I hate seeing the struggle in a lot of people's hearts when it comes to this friction with religion and their lives.
Oh, absolutely.
And anytime you can blend that, I think is wonderful.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of people in the capital C church, like evangelical world, non-affirming world, to them, it's this is the way to do it. This is how you make sure you get into heaven. This is the way that you be a better Christian. Like you want to be closer to God? This is how you're going to do it. It's not journey based. It's not allowing the person to figure it out. It's not allowing the person to walk away for some years if they need to. It's like, that's considered backsliding. Like, don't do that. But some people need a freaking break. Like, some people need, like, this doesn't serve me right now, or this doesn't make sense for my life right now, or like, this is hurting me more than helping me right now. And I think why I have peace in my heart now is that I've learned that I can go at my own pace, and this is not me and Joe's race. This is not me and, Sebastian's race, or whoever you want to call it. This is my race with God. This is my journey with God. This is my race with my sexuality. This is my journey with my sexuality. Like, I get to figure it out how I see fit, and you don't get to tell me how I figure my life out, And so I think that's the freedom that I have now to breathe. And like, yeah, will there be friction in the future? Has there been friction in the past? Yes. Like, will I have to question things again? Yes, but that's freaking life. And if I don't allow myself that, I'm not living.
Well, thank you so much for doing the show. This was fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much.
Big thanks to Israel Isaac for joining me on the show. Follow him on Instagram at IsraelIsaac__. Freddie Nunez created and sings the You Are the Genre theme song, and Adam Smith produced it. Next episode, humor, TV, and book writer Evan Waite joins me on the podcast, but you can listen to it a week ahead of the normies by becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter. This is Tim Barnes signing off with your weekly reminder that you are the genre.
First I got your voicemail, then I got you. We can meet in person or maybe on Zoom. So tell me what's your genre, tell me what do you do. I'd like to know the things that specifically make